back to the channel, everybody. Today we are coming to you with another discussion video. In the past, we did a romancing the superhero video that people seem to respond to. So we thought we'd look at another aspect of superheroes that, in my opinion, I don't feel like a lot of people have been discussing, and that is more and more superheroes becoming R-rated. Mantis, what are your thoughts, though, so far on superheroes starting to move into the R-rated realm?
I mean, historically, there have been bits and pieces of quote unquote superhero movies that have gone into the R-rated, uh, you know, uh, category of movies. Um, but they haven't been big selling ones, right? They may be more fun to us and better to us, just as viewers, and I guess I like realistic gory graphic superhero movies. I'm cool with it. I mean, I like the cartoony stuff too. Don't get me wrong, I like that stuff too. But there is a place for those more realistic type of bloody stuff that they don't you're going to typically see in the R-rated world. So I'm fine with it. I agree with you. They've kind of recently and we'll get into the specific ones that of course, but recently you've seen it with Marvel Studios as well as DC and WB. So they seem like they've kind of leaned into that more on the DC side, but with their main characters specifically.
So, it's ironic because in the past, Marvel has actually had more R-rated movies like the Blade trilogy, um,
Hmm.
the Punisher series. Well, the Punisher, like the
Hmm.
original. Well, I say the original.
Original.
Obviously, there was an original way back in the day, and then you had the newer one with Tom Jane, and then they redid
Yeah.
it again. That
Right.
have always been R-rated. Um, so Marvel's actually had a lot more R-rated superheroes back in the day. It's interesting to see now with basically Disney owning them how much they keep with that,
Hmm.
right? Because obviously it's Disney.
Yeah, I mean, and you can look at. I mean, I did. Is Logan? Is that a Marvel Studios movie?
Yep.
So I mean, you have Logan, you have the both Deadpool movies. Both of those were rated R, and for great for great reason. But it allows, I think, the creativity of the director and the writers to get a little bit more liberal with how they write the character and in the scenes that they in the scenes as well as the situations that they put the characters in the movie into. Um, and it makes things more interesting. You talked about Blade, like I know we talked about doing a Blade back when we were kind of doing reactions, like and I mean I'm so cool with doing like a Blade review just because I love the Blade trilogy, specifically the first and second one. The third one is there's comedic aspects of it that I do enjoy. But they're all pretty good movies. Wesley Snipes is like just the perfect cast character for Blade. So um, and there it's bloody, there is cussing, there is cool one liners. It's like an action flick, right? Like it's good stuff. So um on the DC side, most recently you have Joker, and then they're coming out with the sequel to Joker, which I'm assuming is going to be rated R as well. I'm not actually sure on that, but I just assume that it is. Um, is a where I said it allows the writer and director to take a different approach to superhero movies. You can see with Joker, it definitely was a different type of movie. Like you could have named it Clown Psycho or something, and it would have been just as fine, right? Like you didn't even have to name it Joker. Like the way the movie was constructed, it was you could have seen it not as a superhero movie, right?
Okay, guys. So first off, real quick, I think we'll all agree we're not allowing Mantis to name anything.
Oh, okay. Well, it's official. You don't get to name anything. Ever.
I
Because
mean, you
clown
could name it
psycho
whatever.
doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. But you are right. It does have that again. It was kind of like we've talked about before, like with Captain America: The Winter Soldier, how it didn't feel like a superhero movie; it felt like a spy movie, like kind of a spy
Mhm.
thriller. Joker felt more like a dramatic uh, psycho thriller type of a movie, and not necessarily thinking about
Yeah.
him being tied to a superhero realm, right? Just seems like somebody
Mhm.
who would have lost it, was a clown, for kids, and tried to, bring joy, and then he has that psychotic break. So,
Right.
it fits. It did have a very, very different tone, a very dark tone. Um, Even though you don't really see a whole lot dark until he kind of finally has his break. The whole movie just felt like it was in that from the get go. So, um, but it's interesting because obviously Deadpool 1 and 2 came out before Disney actually owned the rights to that character. That's why Deadpool 3 they're bringing him into the MCU. And Disney
Mm.
did say that they are going to keep Deadpool 3 at least rated R. And kind of like
Oh,
what they
okay.
did with the second one, they are going to bring out a PG-13 version, but there will be the original release will be a rated R version. So I'm kind of curious to see how much they keep with that with characters.
Yeah, the continuity that you've already established in previous movies, and specifically with Deadpool, is a very interesting thing because I don't want to say Ryan Reynolds plays the same character in all of his movies, but it kind of does, and it kind of works for Deadpool. It luckily it works for Deadpool, but uh, I don't know. I don't. Hopefully, they keep him the same, and the characters in there, and they bring him in, and it's just going to be interesting to see how he interacts with the other characters of the MC. Right? Like that's the most interesting aspect. 'Cause they did a little bit, bringing Colossus in, or is that who it is?
Yeah,
Colossus in there, in the other movies, in some of the X Men, but I don't know. Like, and then again in Deadpool 3, Hugh Jackman is going to be in that movie as Wolverine, right?
correct.
Yeah, so they're kind of blending those in, and yeah, I it'll be interesting to see both of those characters in the same space, I guess, because one is so well, Deadpool's very funny. Ryan Reynolds plays that character very well, and Hugh Jackman plays Wolverine very well. But there's such a stark contrast in characters, and their demeanor, especially in the film. So it'll be very very interesting to see what they do with that.
Well, and the great thing is they have a great on and off camera relationship. Like they do the
Mm.
jokes, they mess around with each other, they play gags on each other. They're actually really good friends, and
Ryan Reynolds is a complete and total. The gin's pretty great, though. I'll have to try it someday.
I'm interested to see that balance because, like I said, Deadpool is so jokey and smart mouthed and foul mouthed and all of this, and Wolverine is very, moody, brooding, dark.
Hmm.
Um, so with that stark contrast, and they both have super healing factors. So are they going to is he going to stab Deadpool to get him to shut up, and then of course he's just going to heal? So
Right.
what are you going to do there? And then it's also kind of interesting. So when you talk about and we opened with this about Marvel and their rated R movies, and you had said that those movies, like I had mentioned, they didn't really gross, like they weren't blockbuster movies for Marvel and whoever owned them at the time. It was more of
Mm.
a like Deadpool was the first R-rated movie that then grossed $700-800 million. Then you follow Logan up with doing about the same, and then Deadpool 2 came around. So those were the big three movies that were rated R because I think Deadpool had taken it was Deadpool 2, I believe, took the reins as the highest rated R movie, as far as highest grossing. So
Mm.
it'd be interesting to see if, like, especially if Deadpool 3 does good, is does Disney and the MCU lean, or should say
I
Marvel Studios lean heavier into R-rated films?
I would think so. I mean, like Joker, it brought in 1.07 billion. I mean, and again, arguably the greatest. It's so funny because, like I said, it's not really. It could be called something else, but it's like it's based off of quote unquote the Killing Joke line of story there, but it is based off loosely based off of the DC character, and I mean it did really well. I mean, I kind of want to. Yes, I don't know if they're going to get the return. You have a smaller audience, right? Like you're not going to get like the kids are not going to go see that, right? They're not going to go see. You're not going to get the same audience that you would get with a PG-13 movie. People that go watch uh, Iron Man or Miss Marvel or whatever are not going to go watch Deadpool 3. They just their parents are not going to let them go. I mean, I wouldn't let my kid to go see it. They're not until they're old enough to see it. So you don't get that audience view. So your pool of ticket sales is smaller for sure.
Is it though? And there's the question because there are times, and we had discussed when we've gone out and seen some of the bigger movies that come out. And we're like, do we want to go see it, especially like opening weekend where there's going to be a bunch of kids in the theater acting stupid and it's just going to be annoying. So it's like because I know I've held off from going and seeing certain big movies because of who I imagine the audience is going to be. Like I don't want a bunch of kids running around screaming and yelling through the whole damn movie. So I'm like, I'll
Mhm.
wait versus when it's rated R, I'm like, dude, we can go see it. Like, it's going to be a more peaceful, or at least what you hope would be a more peaceful time. So then it brings out a lot of more people, that a lot more adults are going to come see it.
Maybe I don't know. I'm sure there has to be some poll that they've done on that before. I have no idea if that's a major factor or if it's you know
We'll
I
think
don't
about
know.
Joker. You just said it grossed $1 billion, right? You know,
Mm.
um, so it's like, all right, and then Deadpool and all of them have grossed in the 700 to 800, close to $1 billion mark. So it shows that it works if the character's done well. But I think
Yeah. Well, I was going to say I think it's a stipulation on the Joker side because, quite frankly, he is probably the most popular villain.
villain,
I
yeah.
Yeah, villain in all of. I mean, I would say he's the most popular villain in all of comic books. I just can't think of a more iconic villain than Joker. Everyone knows it, knows who he is. There's a couple of different origin stories from that character that are all great. The character is always written great. It's been played by great actors. Aside from, I mean, I don't know if Jared Leto's a great actor, but Jack Nicholson as well as Heath Ledger are great actors. It's been voiced by great actors with
Mark
Mark
Hamill.
Hamill. So, I mean, the character has been definitely portrayed very well in all the mediums is what helps it so much in making it the focus of maybe one of the first rated R movies that DC has done on a big stage like that.
Well, and I think here's the other side to that too, right? Like we all thought when we watched the original X-Men and we see Wolverine and he's just slashing through people and you're like, there's no blood, there's no anything. You're like, Wolverine's a character that, it's gotta be rated R because I mean his number one weapon is, 6 metal claws that are hacking
Right.
people up, kind of like you saw in Logan, right? And so that's kind of
Mhm.
the expectation. Same thing with Deadpool. You expect, I mean, he's using swords. It's not like back in the old days in the cartoon where they're hitting each other with swords, but it really doesn't do anything. It just, like, you see some damage, but, like, not blood. It's just like, oh, boom,
Yeah.
hitting. And I'm like, no, the swords, you would have killed him. So you expect that realism, and it's like you want to see it because it helps create the character, the whole persona of it. But then to the
Mhm.
opposite side, which you don't want is, okay, yes, Logan, Deadpool, you can make darker by having rated R, but you don't want to bring that into like you don't want to rated R Superman, right? If there's one thing everybody who wants to just nitpick on movies that bitched about with Man of Steel is Superman killed Zod. They're like, oh, he
Mhm.
doesn't kill. Same thing with Batman in Batman v Superman. Which, if you watch the old Batman's, he killed plenty of people, but whatever. But
Yeah.
you don't want to see those characters do that. So it's kind
Well,
of like you want to keep a balance. You want to make and you should make these characters rated R, but then same thing with Captain America. Okay, if you're going to bring Deadpool into the Marvel world, you don't want him with a Captain America or something where you want his movie to
Yeah.
be PG-13 because it's more light and kid friendly.
So here's what I think, and this is gonna I'm gonna kind of go on a little tangent here. So like the Deadpool stuff, they bring Deadpool into the Marvel, the MCU in the same way that I think, I look at Suicide Squad, the newer Suicide Squad, kind of like Deadpool. Like both of those movies are they're comedic. There's violence, but it's really a comedy. Like quite honestly, it's like a comedy action superhero movie. That's what Suicide Squad is. That's what Deadpool is. Deadpool's a little bit more leaning into the comedy aspect of it, but there's funny stuff that happens in Suicide Squad. But there are also what DC did with Joker, as well as what they did with another, and this kind of we'll get into this next point of not so mainstream comic book movies that are rated R.